Good afternoon and a big welcome to everyone here today. Please know that we'll be starting exactly at 4 p.m. and it is 4 p.m. So let's get going. All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Althea Rowe. We'd like to thank you for joining us today for this 30-minute webinar in our Research to Policy Critical Conversation in Language Education series. This year's theme is Safeguarding Opportunity for Multilingual Learners in Shifting Policy Contexts. Today's webinars is supporting the educators of multilingual and multicultural students. And we will be speaking with Joanne Clyde, Director of the Multilingual Language Development Department at Illinois State Board of Education, and Dr. Oki Lee, Professor, and Peter L. Agnew, Professor of Education in the Steinhardt School of Online Culture, Education, and Human Development at New York University. Our facilitators today are Esther Dijon, Professor of Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Education at the University of Colorado and Cal Board Chair, and Dr. Kim Taylor, Manager of Listening Test Development at the Center for Applied Linguistics. We are recording this webinar and will post the recording on our website after the event. Before we begin, please mute your microphone to avoid interruptions. You can activate closed captioning by pressing the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. This event is provided as a public service. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed belong solely to the guest speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of our organization. Our panel comprises of esteemed experts who work at the intersection of research, policy, and practice in language education, language access, and equity. You can learn more about them on the webinar's webpage. We will be sharing the link in the chat. We do encourage you to ask questions via our Q&A box throughout the call. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the discussion. It is an excellent opportunity to tap into the wealth of knowledge we are fortunate to have here today. Also, click the chat button at the bottom of your screen to share your thoughts and comments anytime. Try it out right now by letting us know where you're listening from today. And with that, I will hand it over to our facilitators.
Thanks so much, Althea. Hello, everybody. Let's dive right in as we're looking at where everybody's coming from. And I'm sure it's going to be all over the place. So that's always a wonderful thing. And Althea, can you double check that the Q&A box is open for all of our participants to drop their questions in? That would be super. So without further ado, Joanne and Oki, we are so delighted that you're here. And so the first question is for those that may not have heard of all the things that you do and have contributed. Can you tell us a little bit about your area of expertise and research so that we get to know you just a little bit? And Joanne, would you like to start?
Be happy to. I'm Joanne Clyde. I'm the director of the Multilingual Language Development Department at the Illinois State Board of Education. Our department portfolio includes all activities related to English learner and bilingual education, including Title III grants, compliance, complaint investigations, and technical assistance. We also serve the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program, which serves the children of and youth working as agricultural, migratory farm workers and fishers. We also address world language, the Illinois State Seal of Biliteracy, and ISBE's Visiting International Teacher Program, as ISBE is an authorized J-1 visa teacher exchange sponsor through the United States Department of State Bridge USA program. I myself have been in this position for 6 years. Prior to that, I was a district bilingual director overseeing programming at an elementary school district in suburban Chicago. And before that, I spent 15 years in the classroom as a bilingual and ESL teacher.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Maybe unmute yourself.
I was getting everyone ready to hear me, so that's good.
That's right.
That was a test. Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I would like to talk a little bit about what's happening in science and STEM education with the multilingual learners. Okay. So we are coming from the state to the classroom and research. Now, I would like to say that in science education, there has been real shift from learning about science, the content, to doing science. So students are explaining phenomena and designing solutions in engineering, and they are doing just like scientists and engineers do. So we're talking about the students doing sense-making practices. That's a sense-making. Now, when you think about language education, the contemporary approaches will say that students are but also students are using language in a particular setting for a particular purpose. And that is a shift from learning about the vocabulary and grammar to do. Instead, it's a doing science and using language. So in language education, we are talking about meaning-making practices. So you can see in science, we're talking about sense-making of a phenomena. In language education, meaning-making of a communication idea. So that's the parallel. Now, just to say a little bit about what I do. So in our research lab, we created a curriculum and professional development called Integrating No, science and integrated language. It's called a sail. We are sailing through. So I forgot about that. So we developed the fifth grade year-long curriculum and also professional development. And then we tested in a field trial using the instruments that we developed. And I can say that the results are statistically significant and practically meaningful with all students and teachers. So I can say that our program has been conceptualized, developed into an intervention, and field tested. Now, getting out of from a research perspective of doing science and using language into the reality. So we have been working with the teachers in practice through co-design. But what I consider a real honor is that we also have been working with the New York State Education Department to develop resources for multilingual learners and the teachers. We also have been working with the school districts so that we promote the doing science and using language as an approach. And the last thing that I would say that, all right, I have a little bit of a bragging rate, right, on behalf of my team. So we just got this something called the International Society for Design and Development Education Prize for Excellence in Design for STEM Education. So we do development work based on research. And then we'll be talking about policy later. So thank you.
Thank you both so much. We are so honored to have you here and your wealth of expertise. So, given our topic for today, what do you think are some key understandings from your work in particular that we need to be thinking about when it comes to policy? And what would you prioritize? Okay, would you like to go first?
All right, I will do the story then. So what I described doing science or doing content and using language is a research and practice, but it is thanks to the policy that is providing the policy context. So let me say a little bit about why. In science education, we have a research synthesis called a framework for K through 12 science education. And this is a research synthesis. And that research synthesis provide a foundation for the standards called the next generation science standards. So we are going to the next generation, and it has been implemented for about a decade. What is important about the science standards is that it has been adopted or adapted by 49 states. So it's a national movement. Chances are that when you visit your classroom or the classrooms of your children, you should see this doing science. The kids are doing just like a scientists and engineers, and that they're using language in communicating the ideas. Now, I'm not going to say which one state is not part of the science standards. Now, I'm going to leave it as your assignment. There is one state. Okay. Now, when you think about the language education was just a little bit behind. But we had, English learners in STEM subjects, there was a research synthesis. But what I am really excited about is that WIDA 2020 is very much aligned with the new science standards. When we analyze the science standards in WIDA 2020, it was almost like a reflection as a mirror image. So what do I mean by that? Just like we say that in science, the students are scientists and engineers, and WIDA will say students are multilingual learners. In science, we say that students are not learning the content, but students are doing science, and as a process of doing science, they are learning the content. So it's science or knowledge for, it's not the knowledge of. When you look at WIDA 2020, it'll say that it's a language for, it's not the language of. It's not the language of vocabulary and grammar. It is a language for, meaning that students are using language to do science or math. So you can see that knowledge for and language for as a doing science and using language. And this is why this policy context is so important. Without it, it's going to be really difficult. Now, one last thing that I would say is that the reason why WIDA 2020 is that language for, but doing science and using language, is it because of the No Child Left Behind and ESSA, starting from 2 decades ago, that according to No Child Left Behind, it will say that ELP standards are aligned with the content standards. So they should go in tandem together, not separately. So we can see that at this time, at the national level and state level, that there is a consensus of what we expect the students to do across the content and language, but also across research, policy, and practice. So I'm encouraging all of us, a content language, to come together to join that consensus to promote, I still like to say, doing science using language. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Joanne.
Thank you. In Illinois, we have approximately 330,000 English learners. Identified English learners are enrolled in over 750 of the 851 school districts across the state, from Chicago public schools with over 90,000 English learners to tiny rural districts with 1 or 2. One of the policy decisions that the agency made recently was to create a bilingual teacher pipeline grant using COVID-era ESSER funds. This grant was in connection with a larger teacher pipeline pilot program also using ESSER funds. Over the course of this grant, ISB awarded over $1.8 million to 144 districts. These 144 districts were specifically invited to apply for the grants due to having English learners, but either A, not having teachers with any EL endorsements, or B, having EL teachers working on a transitional or a temporary license. The goal was to help these teachers either earn an endorsement or get a full teaching license. Over the course of the 2 years, 1,447 ESL teachers, 492 bilingual teachers, and 91 teachers in general were assisted with obtaining their endorsements or licenses. In other words, 2,030 educators across Illinois were impacted by this grant. Now, in the resources that I've shared, that will be shared with webinar members, I've included information related to the bilingual teacher pipeline and the larger teacher pipeline grant pilot in these resources. Another policy decision that we've made as a state is to be deliberate about and to prioritize our professional development offerings in recognition that by supporting our educators, we are supporting our English learners. So for example, using Title III state set-aside funds, we partner with the University of Colorado Boulder to provide Literacy Squared training for dual language Spanish programs to support both the administrators and the teachers. We partner with the University of Illinois at Chicago to provide training to school teams who need to integrate Illinois' Spanish language arts standards into their Spanish bilingual programs and to help facilitate these districts in horizontally and vertically aligning their Spanish language arts standards to their content. Department staff also travel around the state and visit our regional offices of education to provide targeted professional development for administrators such as superintendents and principals who are overseeing EL programs. Illinois also has state funds specifically set aside to serve ELs. ISB has partnered with the Illinois Resource Center to provide over 150 high-quality workshops and webinars that are free for educators in Illinois to attend, all focused on supporting multilingual learners, both in the classroom and out. Some of the offerings include webinars to support front office staff on welcoming new families, while others are designed to help parents understand their roles in education. In addition to the professional development, we partner with the IRC to provide a 2.5-day conference for our administrators overseeing EL programs each fall. Over 600 administrators attend this conference. There's panel discussions, differentiated breakout sessions for small districts, large districts, dual language, etc. Finally, in partnership with the IRC, we offer a bilingual parent summit each year to support our English learner and multilingual students' most important teachers, their parents. This past year, over 1,200 people registered for our annual summit. We offered almost 50 breakout sessions, with half the sessions offered in Spanish and with some other sessions offered in Arabic and Mongolian. Some of our breakout sessions were even led by parents themselves. ISB also co-sponsors an annual conference in partnership with the Illinois Association of Multilingual and Multicultural Education each December, called the Multilingual ESSA Conference. This is a conference that supports all educators engaged in both school improvement work and in the instruction of English learners, and it addresses the needs of teachers and administrators.
Yeah, this is, it's so interesting. I can already see some comments in this, like, oh my gosh, this is what state level agencies can do. And the layering that Illinois has been able to engage in is so impressive. So both of you have tremendous expertise working with teachers and I would say educators, right? Not just teachers, it's administrators that are as important, and support staff, everybody, the whole system needs to work together. So thinking about that and what you have experienced and or researched in terms of the supporting educators of multilingual learners, we have quite a diverse audience here today. But what would be some action steps that you would recommend to our audience based on your experiences to date? And Joanne, maybe we'll start with you. We'll just kind of flip the order again. So what would you recommend as action steps?
Well, the first is consider the students who are to be served. Who are your multilingual learners and what are their needs? Who are your teachers? What training have they already had? And what supports do they need to continue to grow in order to meaningfully support the ELs in their classrooms? Who are your administrators? And what do they need in order to support the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the other non-instructional staff who are educating and interacting with your English learners every day? At the state level, it's important to think about all of the regions of your state, not just those districts where historically the majority of your ELs are, but also those areas of the state where districts are getting their first ELs. The needs are going to be different, and the policy decisions made need to ensure that students are receiving a meaningful education. Now, Illinois is doing some amazing things to support our educators, but there are still challenges for educators to access our offerings, such as geography, time, and capacity. We are still working at the state level to figure out more ways to get more timely, meaningful, and accessible trainings to all areas of our state. As policymakers at the state, we are working on a continuous improvement cycle with an eye towards building in equity. Who is attending? Who is not? Who do we need to reach out to? Who do we need to specifically invite? And have we forgotten anyone? And going back to what I said earlier, we really need to keep our focus on the who. All of our efforts are to support our English learners and our multilingual learners to ensure that they have meaningful access to high quality education.
Thank you, Joanne. That's really powerful. I'm already twirling in my own head. Okay, from your perspective, what are some action steps that you would recommend?
So Joanne, thank you for speaking about the system level, and I'm going to go down to individual level. So I started by saying that the theory and research about integration of a content and language, and also that the content and language and the research policy and practice are all aligned. So we are in a good place to do. Just for information, I said that the science standards have been adopted by 49 states. And you know that WIDA 2020 is being used in 37 states and District of Columbia and 5 territories. So we have this policy alignment between the two sets of standards that are guided by research and theory. So I would like to talk a little bit about the practice of what we can do. And I hope that this is the best part of what I'm saying, looking at the time. Now, English was my second language. And for the past several years, I feel like that I'm learning the language of assets. And when we keep saying assets, what do we really mean by assets beyond the surface of this asset to what that means in practice? So I'm going to go through some key points about the assets that multilingual learners bring. So here is my list, and it's not meant to be a laundry list, but just to remind me of this is the language of assets. So the first one from the policy is that you may remember the term limited English proficient students in No Child Left Behind of 2001, about 25 years ago. And then it changed to English learners in Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, which is about a decade ago. And then emergent bilinguals, about emergent and bilingual to multilingual learners. That's what the term that WIDA uses. So we have gone for the past 2 decades and a half from limited to multilingual. It's a shift. So we need to really think about what multilingual means. That's one. Another idea is that I looked at the previous 6 sets of ELD or ELP standards. And what I noticed is that we conflated English proficiency with a cognitive ability based on Bloom's taxonomy of 1958. So when you look at the fine detail, it'll say that level 1 student is labeling a couple of words. Level 2, describe. Level 3, categorize. Level 4 and level 5 and level 6 is argue. So when we did the science standards, by the way, I'm a member of a science standards writing team. So I know a thing or two about science standards. And I also was the leader of NGSS equity and diversity team. So I know a thing or two about the diversity and equity as a part of science standards. So I did a study of ELD and ELP standards just to be the person to know what I'm talking about. And I learned that, whoa, we conflated or equated language proficiency with a cognitive ability that we expected less from the lower level multilingual learners, both in terms of cognitive ability. You cannot do argue, so you do describe and sort. And you cannot use a paragraph. So instead, you just label a couple of words. So now we are talking about all students are fully participating in content learning. And what does that mean? So that'll go into not the accuracy of a language, but it'll be about the merit of ideas. So do you have a good ideas? And once you have a good ideas, what do you do? Communicate ideas. How? Using multiple languages, using multimodality of gestures and expressions, computational models, and the data science beyond linguistic modalities of read, write, listen, and speak. Those are very limited. And so we recognize the cognitive ability, intellectual, but also linguistic and cultural. Now, don't pull out multilingual learners. Keep them in class. because they may be brilliant in science and content areas. You just do not know. We just need to give them multiple ways, or multiple modalities, or multiple languages to communicate ideas. So they are in. For that, very simply, when we think about the pre-teach and front load, that is a very deficit. That Oki, who does not speak or cannot understand English. So I give you the vocabulary, and I'm absolutely scared because I'm scared. So don't pre-teach or front load. Let me in science, and I can communicate ideas using any modes. And by doing science, I learn science. And by using language, I learn language. So it's all flip. And I'm asking everyone to think about what the language of assets mean and what we have been doing, and instead what we should do differently. So I ask you to use language of assets as another language.
Okay, I love that. I think that shift and to think about that. What does that sound and look like in policy as well as in professional development, for example, or curriculum or assessment, and really thinking that through. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful piece. We do have a few questions from the audience. Kim, I don't know if you wanted to kick us off with one of the
Sure.
questions.
We have a couple that overlap specifically for Joanne here. One says, these are great things being done by ISBE. How can educators be involved? And this person was invited to present at the Multilingual conference last year, and they absolutely loved it. What can they do?
I think that is a phenomenal question. The call for proposals will be coming out soon for the next Multilingual ESSA conference. And so we do encourage educators to be involved and to present about what they're doing in their classrooms at the Multilingual ESSA conference. We also encourage educators to get involved in their local communities and to share their knowledge with their peers. There's a lot of authentic interactions that happen teacher to teacher and sharing of knowledge that way. The Parent Summit is focused on parents, so we don't tend to have a lot of educators involved there. However, if you work with your district and your bilingual parent advisory council, perhaps then as a team, you and your parent advisory council could co-present on what's happening in your schools as well.
Thank you so much for that. Let's shift gears just very quickly to Oki. One person says, I think we've heard this before. Are you saying we should not pre-teach vocabulary?
All right. I don't say don't teach vocabulary or grammar. They are absolutely important. But the question is when and how. If you pre-teach and front load, it is just out of a context. It doesn't have any relation to what I'm doing. But just to teach vocabulary in context, because kids would like to know, how do you call that? Instead of a stuff, they would like to know properties or materials. That shining thing, properties. What is that? Materials. So teach vocabulary in context. I typically will say that, think about adult. We need to know, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? I got the idea. Now, how am I going to communicate ideas? So I think language is a little bit too narrow. We should think of communication of ideas. So I don't say don't. It's when and how and who is the agency of doing it.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know if we have time for one quick one. We might. I'll take it back to Joanne. Is it possible for ISBE to bring these resources to schools directly? Not many parents or teachers have time to find these resources and travel.
That is a really good question. And I genuinely wish that we could visit all 851 school districts, 3,872 public schools in the state of Illinois with my little team of less than 13 people. But unfortunately, we aren't able to directly do all of this one-on-one with every district. However, we do have a multilingual newsletter that goes out to anyone who subscribes. If you go to the State Board of Education's website and then agency information, there is a place where you can subscribe to newsletters from the multilingual department, from the special education department, from many other departments, where then we announce anything going on with English learners, world language, CELA biliteracy, including upcoming professional development opportunities.
Thank you so much for that. I see many questions for you, Althea, about how people can get resources and the video. Perhaps maybe this is a good time to close with that. And thank you so much to both of our speakers. This was really, really wonderful. And there are many, many great comments. I hope you have a chance to look in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much. This was amazing. There was so much knowledge in this webinar, and I'm sure the audience is leaving with lots of information. I would like to say, please watch your emails for a recording of this webinar in a follow-up email. We will send that out to you. We thank you so much. Any resources will be in the follow-up email and actually will be linked in on cal.org on the webinar page. Thank you so much to our speakers. You did amazing. Thank you to our facilitators. We're grateful that you did this for us today. And audience, we hope you sign up for the next webinar. Until then, have a great evening, everyone.